trash. That is, all this is. Just a pile of worthless trash, drawn by an orphaned nobody. Marcus sneered as he hurled the thick canvas map straight into the roaring fireplace. Chloe fell to her knees. She felt the heat on her face, as 10 years of her life's work curled into black ash. The bright orange flames reflected in her tear-filled eyes. She couldn't even scream. She just knelt there, on the hardwood floor. She watched her very last hope of saving her father's bookstore to burn into absolutely nothing. Marcus wiped his expensive leather shoes on the edge of the rug. He laughed a hollow, cruel laugh. But Marcus was too busy enjoying his own cruelty to look around the room. He didn't notice the man, in the faded gray overalls, sweeping the floor near the back shelves. He didn't notice how the janitor's grip tightened around the wooden broom handle. His knuckles were turning completely white, and Marcus certainly didn't know that this quiet, dusty man was about to completely destroy his entire life in exactly 5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Knowledge and honesty are the lighthouses that guide us through our darkest storms. Before we go any further into this story, I want you to make a promise to yourself, down in the comments. I want you to write this exact sentence. I choose honesty as the compass that lights every path. Let that be your personal declaration today. Take a second to subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking this journey together. Now, let me tell you how a single burning piece of paper brought a billionaire empire to its knees. Chloe did not care about money. If she did, she would have sold the dusty old building on 4th Street years ago. But the bookstore was the only thing her father left her before he passed away. It was a sanctuary. The shelves were packed with forgotten history, ancient globes, and hand-drawn geographical maps. Chloe spent her days restoring those maps. She carefully retraced the old coastlines and city grids of early Detroit. For her, these maps were not just geography. They were stories of people who lived, struggled, and built a foundation for the future. But the modern world does not care about old paper. The bank was knocking on her door. The final foreclosure notice was sitting on her front counter. She had exactly 24 hours to pay off a massive debt, or she would be thrown out into the street. Despite the crushing weight of the debt, Chloe kept the store open every single day. She kept it open for one specific reason: a little girl named Lily. Lily was 7 years old. She came in every afternoon, wearing a slightly oversized yellow raincoat. But Lily was not like the other children. She never spoke, not a single word. She had suffered a severe emotional trauma 3 years ago and had completely locked herself away from the world. Lily would just sit in the corner of the bookstore, clutching a small sketchbook to her chest. The only person who accompanied her was her father. He was a tall, quiet man who always wore a faded gray janitor's uniform and heavy work boots. He never introduced himself. He just quietly swept the floors of the bookstore for free, while his daughter sat in the corner. Chloe never asked for rent or bothered them. Instead, she would sit next to Lily on the floor. She would open up her massive, hand-drawn maps and tell stories. She told the little girl about underground rivers, ancient mountains, and hidden pathways. For the first time in 3 years, Lily would actually look up. Sometimes, a tiny, fragile smile would appear on her face. When that happened, Chloe would catch a glimpse of the janitor, standing in the shadows. The man in the dusty overalls would have tears quietly streaming down his rough cheeks. He looked at Chloe with a gratitude that money could never buy. But peace never lasts long when greedy men are involved. The bell above the door chimed aggressively. Marcus stormed into the quiet bookstore. He was the lead developer for the new downtown commercial district. He wore a custom-tailored suit and looked around the bookstore with pure disgust. "This place is a dump," Marcus announced loudly. He kicked a stack of old books out of his way. He glanced over at the janitor and the little girl with a look of absolute contempt. "And you let homeless beggars hang out here? No wonder you are bankrupt, Chloe." Chloe stood her ground. "What do you want, Marcus?" Marcus threw a thick legal contract onto the counter. I want your geographical survey of the East River District. You are the only one who has the original foundational maps. Sign the rights over to my development firm, and I will pay off your bank loan right now. I will save this pathetic little store of yours. Chloe looked at the contract. It was the exact amount she needed to survive. But then, she looked closer at the attached blueprints. Her heart dropped. Marcus, you altered the survey data. You shifted the fault line on these blueprints. If you build those high-rise condos right there, the foundation will sink within 5 years. People could get hurt. You are asking me to put my name on a lie. Marcus leaned over the counter, his face turning red. I am asking you to be smart. For once, in your miserable life. It is a multi-million-dollar project. I am not letting some stupid underground rock formation stop my bonus. Now sign the paper and take the money. Chloe's hands were shaking. She looked around her father's store. She thought about the eviction notice. She thought about losing the only home she had left. But then, she looked over at the corner. Lily was watching her. The little girl's wide, innocent eyes were fixed right on Chloe. Chloe remembered what she always told Lily. She always said that a good map tells the truth, no matter how ugly the landscape is. Chloe took a deep breath. She picked up the fraudulent contract, and she ripped it straight down the middle. No, I will not lie for you. Get out of my store. If you are feeling the heavy weight of Chloe's decision right now, pause for a moment. It takes unimaginable courage to choose the truth when you are about to lose everything. Let's stand with her. Go to the comments and type, I choose honesty, as the compass that lights every path. Marcus stared at the torn contract on the floor. The veins in his neck bulged with absolute rage. You stupid, arrogant little girl. You think you can play the moral hero with me? Before Chloe could react, Marcus lunged across the table. He grabbed her original, hand-drawn map of the East River. 10 years of research. 10 years of truth. He walked straight over to the fireplace. If I can't have the survey, then no one gets it. And he threw it directly into the flames. The thick canvas map hit the burning logs. Sparks flew violently into the cold air. Chloe let out a breathless sob. She reached forward, but the intense heat pushed her back. She watched her history turn into black ash. Then, a sound pierced through the crackling fire. It was a high, terrified scream. Do not hurt her. Marcus froze in his tracks. Chloe whipped her head around, in pure shock. Lily was standing up. The little girl who had not spoken a single word in 3 torturous years was pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. Tears were streaming down her pale face. Leave her alone. The heavy wooden broom clattered loudly against the floor. The janitor was no longer standing in the shadows. He moved with a terrifying predatory speed. He did not look for a fire extinguisher. He did not yell for help. He reached his bare, calloused hands directly into the roaring flames. He grabbed the burning edges of the canvas map and pulled it out. He smothered the flames against his own chest. He stamped out the glowing embers with his heavy work boots. Thick smoke filled the small bookstore. Marcus stumbled back, coughing and waving his hands. Are you crazy, old man? You are going to get sued for assaulting a corporate officer. The janitor did not even look at his burned hands. He gently placed the scorched but surviving map onto the wooden counter. Then, he turned to face Marcus. His eyes were completely hollow. They were the eyes of a man who could destroy an entire city if he wanted to. He reached into the deep pocket of his faded overalls. He did not pull out a weapon. He pulled out a sleek, black satellite phone. It was the exact kind of encrypted device, used only by heads of state and top-tier global executives. He dialed a single, private number. He did not say hello. He spoke in a low, absolute tone that made the room feel freezing cold. Authorization code. Alpha 7 Titan. Execute a total asset freeze on the East River Development Group. Liquidate all of their active credit lines. I want their entire capital flow choked out in exactly 5 minutes. He hung up the phone and dropped it back into his pocket. Marcus stared at him for a long, silent second. Then, he burst into obnoxious, mocking laughter. What on earth was that? A theater performance? You are a pathetic janitor, sweeping a bankrupt bookstore. Who do you think you are calling? The old man just stared at him, with cold detachment. I am the man who owns the ground you currently stand on, and you just tried to burn my daughter's sanctuary. For exactly 3 minutes, the only sound in the room was Lily's soft crying as Chloe held her tight. Marcus paced back and forth, muttering about crazy homeless people. Then, Marcus's cell phone rang. He smiled arrogantly and answered it on speaker. Yes, sir? But the voice on the other end was not polite. It was the chairman of the International Bank. Marcus's face went completely pale, draining of all its color. What do you mean? The funding is permanently pulled. Wait. A direct order from the Supreme Board? Who authorized this? Marcus slowly lowered the phone. His arrogant smirk was completely gone. His expensive leather briefcase dropped from his hands. His hands were shaking violently. He looked slowly at the quiet man in the dirty overalls. Outside, 3 black armored SUVs suddenly pulled up onto the sidewalk, blocking the street. 6 men in tailored black suits stepped out and quickly entered the bookstore. They completely ignored Marcus. They walked straight past the front counter. They stopped in front of the janitor and bowed their heads respectfully. Sir, the executive board has executed your orders. Mr. Sterling. Marcus collapsed onto his knees, as if his legs had been cut off. His custom-tailored suit pooled on the dusty floor. Richard Sterling, the legendary founder of global geotech, the undisputed king of the geographical mapping industry, the primary billionaire investor of the exact project Marcus was managing. Mr. Sterling. I had absolutely no idea. Please, I was just trying to clear the area for your arrival. Marcus was practically sobbing, crawling forward on the floor. Richard did not even look down at the pathetic man. Take him out, and make sure he never works in this industry again. The security team grabbed Marcus by his arms and dragged him backward out the door. He was screaming for mercy, but the heavy glass door shut, cutting off his pathetic cries. Forever. Justice does not always announce its arrival with loud trumpets. Sometimes, it quietly sweeps the floor, while watching the true character of greedy men. If you are smiling right now because the arrogant finally met their ultimate match, let the universe know where you stand. Go to the comments right now and type, I choose honesty, as the compass that lights every path. The bookstore was quiet and peaceful once again. Richard walked slowly over to the corner. He knelt down on the dusty floor, in front of Chloe and Lily. He looked deeply into his daughter's eyes. Lily reached out her tiny hand and gently touched her father's rough face. Daddy, she whispered softly. Richard broke down completely. The ruthless billionaire who had just dismantled a massive corporation without blinking was now crying like a relieved child. He pulled Lily into a desperate, tight embrace. He buried his face in her small shoulder, shaking with gratitude. Then, he looked up at Chloe. For 3 agonizing years, the best doctors in the world could not bring her back to me. I dressed like this, because it was the only way she felt safe leaving the house. I sat in the corner and watched you. You had absolutely nothing. You were drowning in a mountain of debt. But you still gave her your time, your patience, and your absolute truth. Richard stood up and picked up the torn, fraudulent contract from the floor. You chose to lose your only home, rather than lie. You protected the integrity of the land, and you miraculously protected my daughter's broken heart. He pulled a solid gold pen from his pocket. He wrote a massive number on the back of the torn contract and handed it to Chloe. Chloe looked at it and gasped, covering her mouth. Mr. Sterling, I cannot accept this. This is way too much money. Richard shook his head firmly. That is not a charitable gift. That is your very first paycheck. I am buying this building today. But we are certainly not tearing it down. We are turning it into the Sterling Heritage Museum, and you are going to be the chief director. Furthermore, my family owns a beautiful antique estate just outside the city limits. It has a massive library, a gorgeous greenhouse full of flowers, and a little girl who would really love to hear more of your wonderful stories. The keys are yours, if you want them. Chloe looked at the burned map on the counter, and then at Lily's bright, smiling face. She didn't lose everything in the fire today. She finally found a family. When you refuse to compromise your soul, the world has a beautiful way of restoring everything you thought was lost. Do not ever let anyone convince you that kindness is a foolish weakness. If you believe that the right choices eventually bring the greatest rewards, make sure you subscribe to our channel. And before you leave, please leave your mark on this story. Write it one last time in the comments below. I choose honesty as the compass that lights every path. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next story.